Hot news: why conservatives can't claim Martin Luther King. Opinion CNN. The truth is that, like every martyr, King was hated by many in his time. Some of his most, which is why every year around this time, I get a kick out of conservatives as one of their own. The latest was by 1. It's hard to imagine two Americans with less in common than Donald Trump and Martin Luther King. Building a wall, and, apparently, the contrast was clear to Martin Luther King's son as well, who spoke out on his father's national holiday. Now, before those words were heard, President Trump tried to blunt criticism for initially leaving any effort to pay tribute to King out of his schedule, by making an apparently impromptu visit to be on the National Mall with Pence. That's great, but the diversity-challenged Trump administration has pursued policies that are the opposite of what King supported, from their explicit efforts to roll back, that exacerbate income inequality, proposed cuts to food stamps, a possible rollback of for housing, crackdowns on, pursuing that rein in public sector unions while earning the praise of white nationalist groups. And that's just Trump might keep a bust of Martin Luther King in the Oval Office, but his policies and political base represent the opposite of the King tradition. And that's evidenced, but Pence is far from alone when it comes to conservatives trying to associate themselves with Martin Luther King. That list includes, it's all part of a twisting of American history that's become plentiful the further we get from the original civil rights era. King won the argument. We've also seen proto-Trumpers like Ted Nugent compare himself, as a frequently extreme gun rights advocate, to a twitch that has clearly been. On the flip side, sometimes we see bigotry defended with big words, pseudoscience, and high-minded phrases. That's when it's worth. American heroes belong to all of us. But we do a disservice. King is accessible today because he was a reformer seeking nonviolent change in an America beset by reactionaries and radicals. He was bitterly, a half-century after his death. As we honor King's legacy, we should have a healthy skepticism of people who invoke his name while echoing some of the same arguments as his opponents. It's another reminder.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.